Honey, come on.
The second everything is set up, it's like, okay, child comes through the door, child
Cute.
And we have another bathroom in the back of the house, and this is the one that he wants to use. Of course. It's so good. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So excited and overjoyed to be here with Marta Gonzalez, who is just an incredible artist, artivista, but also human being and just a collaborator and creator and mother. And I just am super excited to have the launching of Place at the Table, which ironically is a piece from Full Still Hungry, which was a piece that we collaborated on many years back. Contratiempo's Full Still Hungry, if any of you all have seen that piece. Marta and several of the folks from Quetzal were a part of the musical collaboration that was that genius that my brother Cesar Alvarez also was very much a part of. So that was it. Place at the Table felt really appropriate as this idea of like, we need a space where we can actually really just go in honestly, openly, rawly inside of who we are as artists, mothers, but then also who are we as change makers and people inside the field right now. And we all know that we're not able to physically touch one another and connect, and so this is one of our ideas of how to start just really finding more creative ways on connecting around ideas and themes that feel really critical right now. So yay, I'm so glad to see your beautiful face. It's so great.
I took a shower.
I know, mira, está peinada and everything. So I'm really just so excited to it's funny, this whole thing really has made everybody slow down and connect in different ways. And when I was thinking about the people who I just like wish I could have space and time to connect with, you were one of those people that was on top of my list. And so and I also just feel like there's this way that conversations specifically with other mother artists have been so helpful for me in the last couple years. And I just feel like creating a space where we can kind of put those conversations out for everybody to share and enjoy and connect to. And even if you're not a mother artist, I feel like there's just such pedacitos of gold that wind up coming out of some of these conversations. So I'm just super excited to have an opportunity to do that, to share with our community, our Contratiempo community, your Quetzal community, and then also whoever else will tune in. The conversation will be recorded, so we are gonna have people be able to watch it if they didn't get to join us live. But yeah, Marta, you're such a incredible, powerful, poderosa in the world. And I just feel like also giving you the space to just share your story and guide all of us in the lives that we're leading, I think is helpful. So I cannot believe the last time I think I saw you was our gala. Like, is that right?
In person? I think we saw each other briefly somewhere else. Was it ASU? No.
I don't think I saw you at ASU. It was crazy. I think, oh, maybe when I was there for the Binational Arts residency. Yes.
Something really quick, like, oh, hey, bye.
For a moment. Yes.
Yeah.
So when we were just, Contratiempo was just out there with Joyous Justice, and it was incredible to see everyone. And I know that's the community you've been having such a deep impact on and with. So it was great to be out there. And I know Liz Lerman also, you've been working with her on Wicked Body. So that there are all these like by association, I'm connecting with you through other people. And I hear about you all the time, but it's really nice to just have a moment for us to really just get to see each other. So I would love right now just to jump in and start with, and then Marta, I just want to say it makes a lot of sense that you're our first Place at the Table interviewee ever. So you're going to be the beginning of launching this idea that hopefully will go on for many years. After this is all over, we're going to still keep doing this. So I wanted to just Yeah, ask you immediately, like the first thing is just kind of if you would love to share a little bit about just your journey as an artivist. I know even just the concept of artivism, you know, when you Wikipedia it, y'all come up as like
Really?
I don't
Oh
know,
my
I don't know
God.
if you know that, but
Oh, I don't.
yes, like Wikipedia, the word artivism, and like Quetzal, and you all are there as like pioneers of this concept of artivism. So I would just love to, yeah, hear a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are now? Let's start with that.
Okay. So, and in thinking about how what artivist or artivista means to me, I'll begin my journey in this way, and that is, you know, I'm was born and raised in Boyle Heights in East LA, Boyle Heights, to be exact, and I was a daughter of second daughter of Mexican immigrant parents from Guadalajara, Jalisco, and you know, we didn't have a lot of money, but we had a lot of culture and music in the home. My dad didn't play instruments, but he definitely loved music and wanted to be a singer.
Mm,
And the way in which he thought about singing was really professionalizing, right? He wanted to be a famous singer. He wanted to earn money this way. He wanted to
wow.
travel the world. He wanted to be respected. And I think for somebody who's artistic or who has a kind of like loves music and creativity, this was the only way I think that was available to him or that was espoused for his time. And particularly when you think about the era that he grew up in Mexico, the idea of progress and modernity,
Yeah.
or ways of thinking about music as, or the climate in Mexico was about progress, you know,
Yeah.
and pushing away everything that had to do with the rancho or being
Right.
indigenous, right?
Right.
The de-Indianization is what one scholar calls it of all of Mexico, really. Everybody was talking about that, right? If you had an indigena background, you better not,
Like,
you know, show it. It
yeah.
wasn't something that was something to be proud of, so to speak, right? So you shed the language, you shed the culture, you were as modern and as European as possible, right? Even if
Right.
you had black roots, as we know in Mexico exist, right?
Yeah.
But anyhow, so that was what the era of my dad came from, and of course these ideas and ideologies were really pushed through media, be that music or film. And so anyhow, my dad comes from this era, and he arrives as an immigrant here in the United States, and of course this is something that's also prevalent here, right? Being modern and being, you know, all of these things. And so my dad really tried to pursue a life in music through the professionalization of it, right? So as soon as he starts having kids, and you know, we come along, and of course, you know, kids are not usually part of the equation of being an
Yeah.
artist.
Yeah.
You don't have kids, you don't, they're like, they get sick, they
Yeah.
need shit from you all the
They
time.
need to take a poop.
They need to take a poop at the wrong times, like they're always fucking shit up, right? So, so that kind of stuff, you know, is not convenient for an artist, right?
Yes.
It's not something to make art out of. So, so we start, like, you know, my dad, basically his dreams, and it's funny because I talk about him a lot in my book, which is coming up, shameless plug. But
Yes, plug it away. Plug.
I don't know. So with the birth of his family, his dreams kind of die, so to
Yeah.
speak, right? And so he kind of, like, as soon as he finds out that his eldest son, my brother Gabriel Gonzalez, who's a very prominent singer in Los Angeles now,
Yeah.
and continues to be, he has any kind of talent, he kind of redirects his ideas towards my brother, and it's like, he's gonna be a famous singer, right? So he
Yeah.
vicariously, he spends the rest of the years of his life sort of vicariously living through my brother's successes. So my brother becomes a very not super well known, because a lot of things happen along the way, but he ends up getting a lot of work. He's a singer. He, as a child, a sort of singer, records an album, does a host of films, Mexican films, during this era, and in a short period of time gets a lot of traction. And then my dad succumbs to alcoholism and he dies, basically. And so this idea and what he instilled in our family, not just the music part was beautiful because we learned a lot from him, but also the idea of what music was very wrapped around with music, the professionalizing and all that.
Yeah.
And there was really no other example I had until I got to this community of artists in the early 90s in Los Angeles that started thinking about music and the arts in very different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it was particularly through the dialogue and communication and efforts during the Zapatista movement, or the uprising in 1994, that really got us to think about music and art in this whole new way. That music didn't just have to be the soundtrack to social movement,
Right. But it could be,
but it could also be the way in which we engage in social movement, right?
Totally.
Right. So that was the idea for us, and what we learned from the Zapatistas and their teachings of autonomy and self-determination,
Mm-hmm.
the way in which capital can infuse itself or grip onto any part of our corporeal expressions of our, you know, and how they can also, it's not wrong for us to, as artists, to want to make a living. That's not the point. But I think that we now come to the point in the history of art and culture where we need to think about alternative ways of how we can use our skill set. Right?
Yep.
So we know this much about capitalism with a capital C, right? That it's failing.
Yeah.
We know that through capitalism we can take something and it can sell anything. Revolution, you know, it can sell all these, even the most anti-capitalist ideas, right? You can sell it. You can slap a barcode on it, package it, and sell it, you know? And so the artist/activist, or the artist who does political work, also has a market, right? Like we can do that. We know this.
Well, especially I feel like recently there's been, I mean, we've been doing this work for so long where it was not necessarily marketable or seen as like, you know, people being really interested in booking it as, and we've really kind of moved into this really bizarre space of where almost being political is more marketable. It's bizarre.
Yeah. So part of that is gratifying and great for folks like us, right? That have been at this for a long time, because you're like, people are kind of like ready to hear it. But I think it's also, we need to also be weary of those things, right? Where, you know, we have to question some of those things as well, right? Where, especially for the artist activists before, like, it's not so far-fetched to have an artist be political, right? That's artist activists have always been around, you know, singer-songwriters, like in my field, a lot of singer-songwriters do this, and that's what they're put in, the category they're put into. But I think that what I urge in the kinds of things that I talk about as a scholar and as a practitioner, is that we also need to learn to get skill sets that instill a process-based work. And that some of my experience has taught me through the Zapatistas, as well as the Fandango movement in Veracruz, Mexico, which we've been very much a part of and have catalyzed parts of these things, is that what we loved about it is that this idea of the Fandango, for example, it's participatory, it's transgenerational, it's about democratizing to a certain extent music and music practice.
And creative practice,
Right. And not necessarily for professionalization. That's another criteria that I think that I like to always be very forthcoming with, right?
Because or cognizant that that's what you're also in conversation with.
Right. You know, I wanted, and the idea, what Fandango taught us is that there's ways of participating in music that have nothing to do with market systems. Charge anything you don't like. It's about just being together in community through music and with the community through music, right? Like it's just a part of being together. And that was like a huge light bulb that went off in our heads that really resonated with the Zapatista teachings of self-determination. And then you begin to what I realized is that is the biggest form of colonization that has happened, I think, in terms of the corporeal and the spirit, is that because of capitalism and the life we lead here socially, we started thinking of ourselves as products. Right? Everything we do has to be about how much we sell, what we don't.
Oh my God.
No, it's fucked, right? But so as artists who have a skill set,
yeah,
we can do all that. That's fine.
yeah.
I mean, we're still playing as a band. You know, we're recording. We're about to release an album on Smithsonian. Shameless plug, right? So we're still doing that, but we're also really using our skill sets to also reinstate. You know, try to share Fandango practice as much as possible.
Yeah.
Develop other forms of involving communities in creative practices, not for the sake of professionalizing, but for the sake of just being in community with others and being creative and reinstilling our sense of creativity.
Yeah.
Being creative and staying creative is a human right.
Yes.
Capitalism has robbed us of some of those things, those concepts. Where, so I know people that are poet that love to write and love to dance a little bit, and they're like, oh, but I'm not an artist. I'm not a. They're almost like ashamed of wanting that sense of creative output or activity. I'm like,
because they're not making money off of it, or because they're not. Yeah, no, it's exactly. There's also something really incredible about like when you do get into a point where your livelihood or your, you know, being able to pay rent or being able to survive as a human being is based on this creative practice. A lot of times what winds up happening is that it does, I was about to try to write it down what you just said, but capitalism robs us of our capacity to experience our humanity inside of our artwork versus like it being a conduit for which to, you know, for survival inside of this system.
Of their spirituality, you know, like, or like just to be as human beings, we have to remember that we can't let an economic system or the concept of an economic system rob us of the right we have to be creative beings, to stay creative. And to do this, my opinion, why we need these things back, and especially as we do it as community, is really important, because we lost that. We don't have, with few exceptions, the church being one of them, right? We don't participate in creative activity as community very much anymore, you know. And parties, maybe, you dance together, you know, but in terms of just like getting down and being creative with each other in ways that are like, it doesn't matter, different levels of ability, like, you know, jam sessions, whatever it is, like, ya no lo hacemos, you know. And it's so interesting.
It's so interesting, Marta, you're talking about this, because it's making me think of where a lot of the work, the beginnings of Contratiempo began at the King, which was this club in Hollywood, and I used to teach there.
Yes, I used to go there.
Do you remember? You ever go to King?
Yes, I think I remember you guys were there.
But it was this space where people would it was the get down. It was people would just come and dance. I mean, I used to joke that we would always every Tuesday night sweat through 3 t-shirts and it was not everybody wasn't like an amazing dancer. Not everybody there were people who were like, it was their very first time ever doing it. There were people there who had been dancing and getting down for 50 years, but who were like, oh no, I'm not an artist, right? Like those, exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And there's this sense of that none of us were getting paid for any of this to begin with, right? It came from a place, like the seed of this work came from a place of getting down, of just like connecting and getting down. And I feel so much in my heart when you're talking right now, because we've grown into this like company, this dance company, right? And so much of it is.
But what I love about your company, but what I love about your company is that you haven't lost that sense of community and the commitment to staying connected in those ways. And what it has helped you do also as a professionalized company is that you go and you do your performance, this work that you ground in communities and research and things like that. But then you also do these workshops, you connect with people in ways that like that alternative ways that those two things, in my opinion, are what artists need to have now.
Yeah.
We need to, that's the commitment. In my opinion, that's what an artivista is. It's not an artist who does political work. Right. Artivismo for me is those artists who use their skill set to engage in process-based work as well.
Yeah.
So that's the difference for me. Yeah. Some people are artist activists. I'm like, no, somos artivistas.
Right.
In that aspect, it's really a signaling to process. The need to engage in process-based work as well, and instilling in communities, or sharing, or inciting a dialogue through the practice itself.
Right.
And that's what it is. That's the big difference in my opinion, and in this day and age.
And it's the practice. I mean, what you're talking about, the fandangos, or like the jam sessions, the get downs, is like continuing to find spaces where those multi-generational, multi-ability, like, you know, all coming from different spaces are happening. I mean, for us, like the sabor sessions, or like the community get downs are very much a part of that.
Some people have asked me, okay, and so what? Like, so we do that, and then what? Well, I've come from the experience where in Fandango, or in collective songwriting workshops, which is something we do as musicians as well, is that it's not so simple. People engage in these things, and what happens from those processes are like these alternative ways of thinking. People summit into new forms of analysis.
Yes.
So before you know it, and this is something I talk a lot about, is that it is no wonder that people that end up participating in Fandango suddenly they start like, you know what, we need to grow our own food.
Yes.
First of all, they said, how come we don't play like this? This is amazing. And, you know, their skill set keeps building. And then next thing you know, they're like, you know what? We need to fucking grow our own food. They start growing their own food, or they go participate in women's shelters. They do, like, suddenly they realize the power. Exactly. And they start doing other things that have associated with Fandango, or other things, you know. So to me, being in community and being creative in community always leads to something else.
It ignites a sense of like who you are in the world being so much bigger than this individual human being. I feel like that's the fire in it. Well, speaking of like the idea of cracking open and being more than yourself, I'm so curious, because I love that in your beginning journey story, you're talking about how your father having children was like, okay, my dream is, you know, sakawol, right? Like, it's dead. We're done. But in many ways, I mean, he planted seeds with you all. But this idea of mothering, of parenting inside of your work, like, how did that for you? How is that, number one, completely different than the way that your father was approaching it, but also how has motherhood or parenthood, or, you know, being the caregiver and also the creator of a human being in the world, what has that done to your work? How has that shifted the direction of where you've gone as an artist?
Well, I have to tell you, you know, when I first had my son, when I was pregnant, I started there's been a number of sort of people in my life that were always reminded me not to forget who I was, right? I had a child later in life. I was 32 when I had him. And that meant I had traveled, I had done things. You're frozen. Are you still good?
I know. You're frozen too for a second.
Oh, okay. So what I realized is that for me, my internet connection is unstable. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Can you see me?
I can see you. Okay. It just keeps kind of going a little bit, but I can see you.
Okay. So one of the things that for me is for one, what I've done and what I've accomplished and seen, like I had been through, which is why I waited so long, you know. I didn't decide to have children earlier because I knew the level of well, you know, I know that I'm not ashamed to say that I felt like, to a certain extent, selfish. Like, I wanted to do things, I wanted to see things. I didn't have a degree, like there were things that I wanted to do, and I knew that I needed time. So I waited a long time. So by the time I had my son, I was like, okay.
Can I just stop you though? How incredible that is, because I've heard so many women say that, of like, it feels selfish to, like, you know.
No, it's not right.
that we have this martyrdom thing, that it is like selfish to like want to have an education or want to have space for yourself and I just think that that's also, we got to transform that, because
you're right. You're absolutely right. And
You're
which is the
allowed to
reason.
want that. You're
Exactly. And in my sense, like I realized, like, okay, like I also it's a little bit of fear too, because it has to do a lot with patriarchy too, right? All of those things, because not just that idea, but also the fact that I knew that I didn't with Quetzal, like I knew him well enough, but I also thought, like, my husband, like, you never know, what if he doesn't like parenthood and he's like,
yeah,
you know what, I'm out, and then he bounces, and then I know what it's like to live and be raised by a single mother with four
yeah,
children, because my dad left when I was 11.
yeah,
And that shit was hard. I saw her struggling. I knew other single mothers that she was in contact with, they would help each other out. But then also I had experience, I had friends who became single mothers,
right.
and that shit was hard. I was like, hell no, I'm not trying to do that if
Yeah,
I could help it.
yeah,
But if I was gonna do it, I thought the best thing I could fall back on is, like, let me get a degree, let me
yeah,
see a little bit, so I don't feel so frustrated if the time comes. And I was thinking of all these things. I've been
yeah,
a huge planner all my
yeah.
life, as much as I could plan.
Did Quetzal know that you're planning? To,
Yeah, I was like, if this
just in case.
yeah, just in case your ass is
You
not good with parenting, I'm out. It's cool. Like, bye. But he
know.
ended up being an amazing dad,
Yeah,
and he still is.
yeah.
I've learned so much from parenting, from him, watching him.
Mm,
It healed a lot of the things that my father never did.
yeah,
And watching him and staying true to his own creative self,
I love it.
and being a father and helping me out when I said, hey, I think thinking about going back to school. He's like, do it.
Yeah,
It's like, really? But what about this? And I applied for a Fulbright, and I was like, God, but then we moved to that. God, I don't know, the baby's so small. He's all, this is the time to do it. Let's do it. Let's go.
yeah, I
Like,
love
he
it.
was the one, like, egging me on, and like, let's do it. And then later when he goes to school, we're not going to be able to move around as much. And I was
Yeah,
like, oh, that's a good point. Okay. And always doubting myself, but also him behind me going, go, mommy, go,
yes,
and so anyhow, so it's really,
powerful,
his support has been paramount. Like, it's been
so
really important.
powerful.
And he always never let me forget the fact, like, when I went into academia, he was like, Marta, don't forget that you are a musician first.
Yeah, I
You
love it.
play music, this is you will die, you will wilt without it. You don't
Mhm.
forget that. And so if we had a gig and I was too tired, or if I went, we would still do so. He always kept me connected.
It's so powerful, Martha, to have that partnership is just like, no, to find that person who is pushing you, but also like believing in you to believe in yourself, right? Like it's
Right.
beautiful. It's so
Right.
powerful.
And so that to me and approached everything. So if it seemed like too impossible to do, he'd be like, no, it's okay. And
Yeah.
then I noticed my son, as we would go on, we toured the first couple years of his life, and I realized that my son was happy so long as he was with me. And he
Hmm.
would, he'd eat the chi-chi, and that's all I needed to take. I just needed to feed myself, change his diaper. If he cried, he wanted the chi-chi or he
Yeah.
needed to be changed.
Yeah.
Other than that, he was around all kinds of music and
Yeah.
people. And it was like, he was just on my back. We were
Yeah.
always together. We traveled together.
Also that your family was together. I mean, for my family, what's been super hard is that I'm touring and my husband's staying back here, and so that it feels like touring pulls our family apart. Whereas I can feel in your family like touring meant everybody's a unit together. There's all this chaos going around us, but we're super solid and clear, which I think for a child is so it's powerful, because they
Yeah.
feel that. I mean, I grew up in the movement with union organizer parents, and that was, I mean,
Yeah.
we were like, all hell was breaking loose all around us, but my family unit was so solid that I felt safe, and I knew that I was going to be okay even if everything around us was falling apart. There was this sense of like,
Right.
the family unit that's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. I take that for granted. I feel like, because we had members in the band that they had relationships, and they would leave. We would leave for a month out, and
Yeah.
I knew, we were fine, but I knew that they were like, oh man,
Yeah.
my relationship's starting to fall apart. I can't do this anymore, and which is what really disbanded some of the early generations of Quetzal. But it's like it's always difficult, but what I realize is that as a mom and an artist, like, we still need to do you need to be true to your identity. And if staying creative is part of it, whether it's on stage or in the community, which is why we need more of these creative practices in community that include children, that include older generations. You know, these things are, people will be happier human beings.
Absolutely.
We will be, it's a kind of therapy as well. And I realized I would feel better when I would play, when I would like, you know, like early on, luckily I didn't experience, thank God, postpartum depression. I know it's really real, but I did experience a sense of like, okay, this is it, you know, this is my life. I had a great run. It was fun to play music. I swear to God, I was like already like putting, you know, putting albums together with pictures of places that I had been, like as if it was over.
That is great.
And I realized, and then,
am I planning my own funeral? And I'm like,
exactly, my own photo book, poster board. And then one time Quetzal was like, hey, take a shower. And I was like, why? He's like, because, you know, our brother-in-law, he's like, Cesar's gonna come over and give you a lesson. What are you talking about? Yeah, he's gonna give you a lesson. And I was like, what about the baby? He's like, well, if he cries, I'm gonna be in the room. If he cries, I'll bring him to you. And I remember being like, but he's like, Marta, get dressed. Come on, have a lesson today. And I was like, oh, okay.
I love it.
I know, right? And I give that example a lot, as well as me being in grad school and him cooking every night, you know, taking care of Sandino, and then also working, and then going back and forth. And so partnership is really important. And I know it's more difficult for single moms because I lived that part of it too through my mom, but she always found a way to connect us to art and practice and all of these things, because she knew free stuff, but she knew it was important to us to be creative, to be, you know, exerting emotional energy.
Well, and maybe for single moms out there, I mean, I'm not a single mom, and so I also have that partner who's got my back in a powerful way, but there is a sense of finding that community and that support elsewhere. Like where are the places, the people who believe in you, the people who are going to push you, the people who are going to like not be okay with you not being your best and most powerful, and, you know, showing up. I think that finding that, in whether it's in friendships or in family, but like that is so critical, right? I mean, it's all of it. It's what the Fandango is about. It's what the Get Down is about. It's about that community. We need to, the community reflects us, like we are reflected in others, and so when we are around people who can reflect us back in the way that is the most powerful and the most ferocious versions of ourselves, we're gonna step up to that, right? I think that's powerful.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, like so Sandino, who, like, because obviously he's become a musician, right? Like he's like a virtuoso in his own right. Was that always something was that just from growing up around it, or is it, because I can't imagine you all as parents who would try to, you know, push him in that direction. I mean, I'm imagining you kind of like created space, and then like how did that happen?
One time we were in Veracruz, we were living there, and sometimes Quetzal will just start playing, you know, and we never sat him down and taught him a song, right? He just started singing, and he sang in the right place, because we would teach people stuff. He knew exactly where to sing, exactly where to be quiet. He knew the rhythm, like it was incredible. And I was listening to him, and I was grabbing, at the time you didn't have right, and I was like looking for the camera and like trying to find, like, because I thought this is the only time he was in tune. And
how old was he?
He was still in diapers. He turned 3 years old in Veracruz, so he must have been 2.5.
Wow.
And I'll never forget that. That was the most incredible thing. And then the second time I told Quetzal, see if he'll sing again, because the first time I started laughing. I was like in shock. That he knew it. He could always speak really well. He spoke like at a year old. He was always really smart. And then Quetzal was like, and when I laughed, he would get really mad. He'd go, no te rías. He would scream at me, like he thought I was like laughing at him rather than near him, right? Right. And I would say, no, I'm not laughing at you. I'm happy. Le decía, estoy feliz, mi amor. Es que estás cantando y cantas muy bonito. And he would say, no te rías. And I would go, okay, perdón, mi amor, perdón. And so there's a video online. It's called Sandino Canta la Guacamaya. Quetzal uploaded it a long time ago. But so he sang again, and the second time is I filmed him, and I was like trying to keep a straight face as possible, but he knew exactly where to sing. You know, it was incredible. But he learned, and kids do this, right? Even if they're not participating and they're running around the tarima, they're learning, they're listening.
They're we call it ear hustling. No, they're completely and totally tuned in.
Exactly. Ear hustling. I love that.
Ear hustling.
Yes, I gotta write that down. There's something to that. Yes. So and so that's what he did. Like he just picked up really quick. And so I will say this, that once we decided to get him piano lessons, there are moments where your kid will not want to learn.
Yep.
Sorry. To me, I was like, you know what? No trabajas.
Yeah.
No vas a la escuela y vas a aprender a tocar el piano. Like, sorry. Like, you know, there's nothing, what, you want to be on the TV? You want to, like, no. Vas a una hora.
Yeah.
45 minutes. When he got old enough, it was 45 minutes. First, it was 30 minutes. But once he got, he would get over these humps, these thresholds, that he just was. And before you knew it, dude, I couldn't sit next to him and try to make sure that he played every note because I didn't know. It was like Chinese. I couldn't read shit. Like I was like, I couldn't follow along anymore. And he just totally surpassed us. And but he's an amazing. He has a great ear. He can improvise. He has perfect pitch. He can improvise like nobody's business.
Oh, he's a virtuoso. I mean, I when my jaw was dropped when you played at our gala, I was like, who is this kid? Because he was a baby the last time I had seen him. And it was just, you know, it's unbelievable. What I think what you just said is so important too, is that this idea, because I feel like a lot of our kids, we assume that, you know, like if they're not passionate about something and want to do it all the time, then, oh, that must not be the thing that they want to do. But it's a practice, right? I mean, I remember even with dance growing up, I always loved to dance, but there were times where I was like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go to practice. I don't want to go to rehearsal. I don't want to go. And my mother would say, you've made a commitment. You made a commitment this year to do this. If you really don't want to do it anymore after this year, then we cannot sign you up again. We're paying. You are, you know, you're committed. Like you're gonna show up, and that's what's gonna happen. Period. The discussion. It wasn't even like a question. And so those times, like you said, the humps, like the times where you're kind of like, oh, I don't want to do it. But if you keep doing it, then it's when you actually start finding the deep joy in that practice. And so I just think that
I want to make sure that in my kid and the way I rear, it's like there were times where my mom, I think, you know, would tell me if we were really not into it and we would cry, she would be like, okay, well, maybe it's, you know, she didn't like to see us cry.
Yeah.
You know? And I'd say, and I remembered that because there were times where I wish, I remember when I was a kid, my dad tried to put me in piano once, and it cost too much money. We weren't able to do it, but I remember thinking that I wish I would have been more, you know, pushed more to like, I want lessons, you know, but I didn't know, I didn't want to burden them. I knew that there was no money and there were critical ones, like, what are they going to just buy me lessons? That's not how it works, you know? And so, but when I think about some of folks that I know around me that are like, oh no, but she would cry. He didn't want to do it. And I was like, too fucking bad. Like, sorry. So, well, you know, your ass is going to sit here 30 minutes. That's all I'm asking for. And you get a cookie at the end of it. Like, no, I feel like there's too much coddling and too much like, oh no, I can't. You do that to kids. Like, fuck that. No, we're going down the wrong road if we think like that. I'm not saying hit them. I'm not saying any of that.
But there's an expectation for their greatness and a commitment to practice. I think the commitment to practice is
practice.
And it's funny because it translates also in terms of relationships, right? Like that idea of like relationships are always going to be like easy and happy and wonderful. And if they make you sad or make you cry or make you miserable, then that means it's not right. Like,
or
no.
Yeah. Like, that's right.
It's the same kind of concept of like, sometimes you need to roll up your sleeves and put in the work, and putting in the work is going to actually have you then be able to deeply appreciate, you know, the power of what you've created or the power of what you've practiced, including being in relationship, right? Like being in relationship is work. I mean, it's not always going to be a space of like ease, ease and pleasure. That's actually like rolling up your sleeves and supporting, and or rolling up your sleeves and advocating for yourself, or like whatever that is. So
exactly.
yeah,
Totally. Yeah, I think like we are, and that's part of, sometimes I think about capital, where if you don't like something, you throw it away because you're able to buy it somewhere else, or you buy it, whatever it is. It's like that. You're right. In relationships, like we do have to commit to certain things, and try to get past it. And if there are certain underlying issues, like that doesn't mean you're not going to experience them with the next person that comes along, So if you committed to something, then I love the part about staying committed. You made a commitment. You're going to try to stick to it as much. And now if it's toxic, if it's all these other things, of course not. Obviously. But if there's a kind of, and I even believe in not masking everything from your children either, right? You're like, you know what, your dad and I are like not cool right now, but deep down inside, I know that I love him, and we're gonna work this shit out. We're trying to work this shit out. Like I'm gonna kill him sometimes. Okay, I dream about stabbing him, but it's not me. That I don't love my man. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely.
But you know what I mean? It's like,
I know what you mean.
And like, and I'm very much about, I think there are certain things that I do protect him from, but I also feel like it's very important for me to think out loud sometimes. And sometimes he gets angry at me. Like, I'm all paranoid now because you're doing, like, I'm just trying to keep you safe. I'm trying to, like we go back and forth all the time. And that's the kind of relationship that we have,
And that openness is going to actually build resilience in him. I mean, there's
or paranoia, but at least it's going to keep him safe.
I will never forget. So my parents showed me Roots when I was like in second grade, like the full series of Roots watched in second grade. And looking back on it, I mean, when I was like a teenager, I was like, what, are they out of their minds? Like that, the amount of like intensity that a second grader is now thinking every time I look around anywhere, like understand like US history and the framework of that. But I was like, how powerful is that? How important is that to like actually know that is your framework? Because then there's this sense of like, there's not a moment in time where you're like, oh, all of a sudden now I actually am realizing everybody was hiding all of this from me. But there's I don't remember as a kid not knowing how much injustice our country was responsible for, like that was just like always a framework that I was clear about, because so early on there was this sense of like understanding. When I think that we try a lot of times we want to shelter our kids to be having these like ethereal a childhood which is not actually reflective of what's happening in the world, and like the kids actually can handle it if we share with them the truth. I think it's actually really powerful and important. So
absolutely, I think that and there's a way of sharing it too, right? Of course. And I think about like how much time was like look at how much time is really spent on slavery, right? In the school system. Casi nada, like maybe a page in the US history. And
even the framework of it. I mean, I've told this story before. When I was because I went to school in the South, I think this is why my parents showed me Roots, because my second grade teacher told us that Africans came on vacation for, I know, it's outrageous. My mother was like, what? Like completely. She's like, okay, well, clearly we need to have our own social studies education happening at home, because I mean, I was no longer in Miss Childers. I'm gonna put her on blast. Miss Childers in Columbus, Georgia, get your life, Miss Childers. But I never had to go back to her class ever again. But I think about all the kids she did teach, right, whose parents didn't actually stand up and make sure and raise hell. But that was the idea of like the way that we're teaching our kids history is so absolutely backwards and narrow.
And there's never going to be a right time. It's not like they stop being human beings young or older. It's like they're never, as a matter of fact, they may make those important connections on how Black bodies were enslaved to build the cornerstone of the economic enterprise of this country. Like they may make how racism works, how race is a construct, how race is like, like these things are, it's like
now this was not I've discovered, land discovered, or like all of the
all of that, you know. And it's funny because they spend so much time on the Holocaust, right? They spent a lot of time in his school on the Holocaust. And I remember saying, like, Sandino, like, that was like one of the most well documented genocides, near genocides in the world. I said, but let us not forget the indigenous genocide of the Americas, and you know, with the advent of colonization, with the Spanish and the, you know, all of the destruction in the Americas. Okay, vamos a hablar de eso. You know, we gotta read, and so we would read little sections of Open Veins of Latin America and like all of that shit. It was
people's
like
history,
exactly. And he read the people's history.
There's a where is it? Hold on a second. I got like
yeah.
This is our homeschool. This is homeschool right now.
Oh my God, you are your mother's daughter. Yeah,
my mother's daughter.
Awesome. Oh my God.
So funny. No, I'm actually loving this homeschooling moment in time, because I'm like, oh, I have a lot more control over the information and depth of understanding and knowledge that my children are both getting. There's, even though I'm really I'm struggling with figuring out how to do all of it. I've been really, like, the last 2 weeks immersing myself fully in homeschooling, and I actually, like, I'm kind of appreciating this moment in time and I think it's gonna shift who they are in school later on too, because we really are, we're going in. I'm like,
yes.
So actually that kind of brings me to my next question for you is, I mean, and here we are in the middle of, you know, a pandemic, a global pandemic. I'm kind of curious, obviously that's framing everything that's happening right now in terms of it's shifting the way that we're thinking about even our own work and sort of not, I don't want to describe it as instability, but uncertainty about the future, about what's happening next, and when things are going to kind of be shifting, where we can start connecting physically with one another again. What are the things for you right now, are the things that you are really thinking about, or struggling with, or are trying to wrap your head around? Like what are those? Well, if I could look into Martha's brain.
In some respects, I think that this crisis and the kind of isolation that we're being encouraged to engage in physically in real corporeal time is going to be important for the work that we do from here on out, because people are suddenly going to realize that they need each other in ways that, you know, even the most basic ways, like, hey, how's it going? And hey, you know, or like, you know, going to the store, and to even being around other bodies and in community with folks, I think that's going to take on a whole new meaning. So I actually think the kind of work that we do will be beneficial ultimately. I think art institutions are already feeling the brunt of it, and will also have already valued it, but even more so for the process-based work that we do, right? So that's the good news around it. The bad news, I think, is that, and I know that Big Brother is listening, is that how quickly a scare like this has made people afraid of each other is also something that needs to be looked at and studied, sort of like how the fear of one another, and in order to safeguard our families and our lives and like all of those things, is like, wow, that's significant. And I never thought it would happen in my lifetime. And that part of it is scary, and I haven't wrapped my mind around it, but there's an element of it that that has to do a lot, I know, with like I really recommend folks to read Naomi Klein's, The Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism. A wonderful book.
The Shock Doctor, you said?
No, The Shock Doctrine. Doctrina. The Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein, and it's called The Rise of Disaster Capitalism. And this is a kind of disaster, you know, that is very much, has impacted and actually will impact capital. How it revolves, and it also proves how, based on how inequipped the government is to handle such a crisis, how capitalism, another indication that it has continues to fail. You know,
it's broken. Yeah, it's a broken.
That it's broken, and that we have to find a new way.
Yeah.
That we need to, and which makes the kind of work that we do even more important, because we're going to need that social structure to keep us together in ways that are beyond what capital can offer us, right? Absolutely. We saw how quickly capital shut down our businesses, right? Yeah. So it's like we got to think of those other ways on how we can sustain each other in ways that are both emotionally and economically possible. Mm-hmm. So to me, this is an opportunity. This crisis is an opportunity to build on something and to reflect. Of course, we have a lot of that to do, but also to think about how another thing is, like, we'd always talked about growing food. I'm pretty much kicking myself right now for not growing my own food, right? I actually have a compadre. I have a compadre who has like a food forest in his backyard. He has spent the last like 10 years growing, like he has papayas, plátanos, tomatoes, kale. Like he comes over every so often and brings boxes of things that you don't have to go out to get. It's incredible. I was like, and we just bought a property, so we've been here for 3-4 years, but within that time I could have grown some shit and I never did. You know? I'm counting on my compadre to help me out now, right? So, and he does.
You can be germinating the seeds from your food right now. Like, it's so funny. We've been doing our science lessons. We've been germinating like onions and garlic and all kinds of stuff. I'm like, we might start using this opportunity to start planting some stuff.
I mean,
green thumb. My mother used to call my garden death row. It's so bad. Alive. It's so terrible.
Yeah, I know. But that part of it like needs to happen now. You know, I'm like, wow, you know, I should have, you know. So anyhow, so that kind of stuff too, you know, the sort of really thinking about how, you know, we're not going to be able to complain and say like the government's not doing anything. It's like, you know what? Well, you know,
what are we doing?
Yeah, the community gardens are probably going off the hook right now, right? Like, hell yeah, they did the right thing. They, you know, and I'm sure they'd help other people out, you know. Yeah. But I feel like I need to do those basic things, you know, that kind of stuff. It's that kind of thought that I go into my mind now too, that I'm like, oh God, you know.
One having this sense of, I mean, everything you're saying is like, yes, ashe. And I think that there's this sense of, my real hope and desire for all of this is that after we are, you know, in a place where people are not being in social isolation anymore, that there's a real sense of like learning and taking with us these like that it doesn't just pick up as, you know, business as usual, but also there's this incredible thing that's happening where, you know, we're seeing medicine being socialized, we're seeing education being socialized, we're seeing like little pieces of like, you know, the social, like socialization, or not socialization, but socialism being kind of like peeled in here in ways where there was so much resistance. So this idea of universal healthcare, and now there's like, there are things like rent freezes or things that are happening that are about large all-encompassing kind of social structures that are beyond capitalism. And I feel like, to me, that does give me hope that there's a sense of, okay, well, if we can actually make some shifts and changes that people can then see the result of and understand that we have these things in our fingertips, we have these things in our capacity, right?
Yes, and people need to stay critical, because there's going to be things going around, like, you know, even the term socialism, you know, I know what you mean, but for some people it's a loaded term, right? Like where they're like, oh, they're going to take away our freedoms and they're going to take the people that do not do their fucking homework, that don't know what they're talking about, you know, and there's so much money. This country is like one of the most powerful countries, and we have the worst healthcare in the world, you know, and it's just
not an accident. It's not
Yeah,
an
it's
accident.
not an accident. And it's also something that I think we need to be more cognizant of and aware of the kinds of things that good things can happen, but also really bad things like,
Yes.
folks that have been trying to, really take away Social Security or
Yeah.
really take away all of these things
Yeah.
are going to try to do. I recommend, again, she has small clips of what could happen, the good things and the bad things.
Yeah.
That night, Naomi Klein recently posted, and actually, if you go on to Democracy Now with Amy Goodman, there's
Yes.
a clip. If you scroll down, you'll see Naomi Klein talking about what could happen, the good things and the bad things. Social Security started out of the Great Depression,
Right.
New Deal, and because people were and we're headed that way.
Yeah.
We're so
Absolutely.
bad. There's going to be a lot more homeless folks. It's
Yeah.
already bad, but it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And if we don't do something about having 3 month, no rent, don't even think about paying, and the banks need to fucking support that.
Yes.
They can't be not supporting and thinking of bailing out banks, but not the humanity and the people.
Human beings, right?
Yeah, they need to really think about, and regardless of immigration status,
Yeah.
they have the money to do it. Se
Yes.
hacen pendejos,
Yeah.
but anyhow, those things are happening, and really we're going to be part of trying to really advocate for those things in terms of forgetting rent payment for at least 3 months for folks,
Yeah.
because it's going to take a minute to get back on their feet.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening. I know in New York, the mortgages have been freezing, but it's like, okay, mortgages are freezing, then what's happening to renters? Because you can't, if they're not having to pay their mortgage, why are they having to pay their rent? Like, we need to just freeze it down the line. But you can see classism sort of sliding in, and even a decision like that who's being protected are the property owners versus the people who are renting. And so there's this, yeah, our system is so many levels and layers of inequity that this entire thing is shining a big light on. Like, you're just getting to see it all in light. It's really kind of, I mean, as a child who grew up the way I did, the child of two labor union organizers, I'm like, I've been seeing this since I was born, and now I'm like, the world is being able to see it, right? Like, it feels kind of this. It's an exciting moment in time. I mean, I hate to sound like I'm celebrating this happening, but in many ways, there's this sense of real hope of what's possible out of something like this happening, right?
Yes.
So I would love to I know that we're about to be out of time. And of course I was like, maybe it'll be 45 minutes. I could talk to you 3 more hours, but I know that we're not going to do that. My children are both up now running around. Luca just grabbed my phone. So I don't have access to any of the questions for people.
You want to?
Can you see them? Can you see them Facebook? No.
I can't see on Facebook.
No, if you can't, then that's okay. Then we'll figure it out.
I could.
Salud. Yeah. Actually, I can see a couple of them. Okay. People are saying hello. If there are any questions, I don't see any questions so far. I just see love and hellos. But I did want to ask you if you had things, any sort of creative projects, things that you want to share about. I know you dropped a little hints about the book, about an album dropping, all that stuff. We would love to be able to make sure we share with everybody all those things, and anything else that you're working on, want to share.
Okay. Well, yeah. My book is coming out on UT Austin Press. It's called Chicano Artivistas, East LA, Music, Community, and Transborder Tactics in East LA.
Yay!
And it's really a long version and theoretical frameworks, including of pretty much a lot of the stuff I talked about right now, but it's a lot of autoethnography mixed in with some Chicana feminist theory, Black feminist theory, U.S. third world economic development theory. And it's really a critique. The macro look is a critique on capitalism and how it has fundamentally altered how we think of ourselves as creative beings and how that has intrinsically affected how we relate to each other. That's kind of the idea around it. And then towards the end, are some methods that, the collective songwriting method, and as well as the Fandango. There's a whole chapter on the Fandango and in how it's been taking shape, although mostly in California, but I do mention other states briefly. But my experience is mostly in California and Seattle, Washington. And talking about that framework, and so you can actually order directly from the publisher an advance copy, and actually there's 20% coupon is GONCHI, capital letters, Gonchi, I think.
GONCHI.
GONCHI, all capital letters. That's like the code, the 20% code. So please, anybody who wants to use it, please
I'll
use
be getting my 20% off. Yay.
And then we recorded an album last year based on a lot of like travel in Veracruz and some collaborative work we did with Ramon Gutierrez, who is one of the founders and requintero extraordinaire in Veracruz.
Nice.
Ramon Gutierrez, and so we wrote a couple tunes. It's all based on the son jarocho and the form, the versadas, all of these things, and it's called Puentes Sonoros, which means sonic bridges, and it's out on Smithsonian Folkways in the summer, so July.
Okay. Great.
July. So both things are being released.
Say the title of that album again.
Sorry. It's called Puentes Sonoros.
Puentes Sonoros. Okay, great.
Yes.
We're recording this, and so we'll make sure to like put these things so that people can see them. Wise. Great. And is there anything else you want to share, or anything else you want to say, or anything else you want to?
Man, well, no, I just want to thank you for giving me the time, for letting me, I feel honored to be one of your first guests.
Yay.
I know this is so important and helpful for a lot of folks. Hopefully, I hope anything I've said, helps folks. If I've offended anybody, I apologize. But, for the most part, I come from a place of, trying to just share my experience and, and I admire so much the work that you do, how much ganas you put into your work, your music, the way you share, your energy all the time has always been so generous, and you're just a beautiful human being, and don't let anybody tarnish your light in any way.
Oh, thank you, Marta. You seriously, I felt so honored that you got to be the first one, and I seriously can't imagine who else should have like launched this thing. And I just also, I deeply respect you as an artist. I deeply respect you as like a, transformer, change maker, creator. And I'm super excited for us to get to cross over some more, because I miss you and I've been loving what you're doing from afar. I can't wait to read your book. Any critique of capitalism through the art, I'm like, yes, add to my collection. And also feels like it'll just continue to inform the work. I feel like I'm always kind of looking to you as a beacon of light and love. So I just appreciate and honor you so much. And thank you for spending an hour with me.
No worries. I also wanted to tell you all, hopefully if folks are still listening, is that we're going to have a house concert pretty soon in the next couple days. That's going to be connected to some of the speakers and folks we're trying to bring attention to, not only the rent strikes, but also the some of the work on some of critiques on homelessness and things like that, houselessness, and so we'll be opening up our living room, a trio concert. So please keep an eye out on that. I keep saying that, but it's coming. It's just that it kind of left my hands. It was an idea, and then they're like, yeah, and we should. Artivists took it, and like, it's great, which is wonderful, So it's going to be bigger than I thought, and it's going to be nationwide. We have other artists lined up, so you'll get to see all of these things. It's going to be really, really fun. We have really big, amazing artists, so you'll see.
Can you give your social media handles so people can also access those? What are your?
Oh, right. So my Instagram is, I should know this. Marta from Quetzal.
From Quetzal, yeah.
Martha from Quetzal, Quetzal. Marta from Quetzal, and then I'm Marta Gonzalez on Facebook, and then but we're also on Quetzal. We're probably gonna live stream from Quetzal Music, Quetzal Music on Facebook.
And we'll make sure to link all of that. So we'll let our people know through our.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I just realized, actually, oh my God, did I just not? I don't know if I recorded this thing. So this might. I think I might have just not. Yeah, resumed recording. I think I just started recording right now.
See, all that genius you lost.
So if you didn't tune in, bueno, se jodió. It's like you lost it.
Oh, yeah, recording. Oh my God, Ana Maria, that's hilarious.
Oh my God. So this is why we're trying to figure it out. It's ridiculous, but I have it in my heart, and also we're gonna definitely make sure. I'm hoping maybe somebody else recorded some other or there's another way to do it. But, oh my God. Technology is not my thing. I'm just saying.
You're gonna have to have me back on at some point.
I'm gonna have to have you back on, honestly. or that we'll just have this like couple moments and then have all of the information that got shared. But we love you so much, Martha. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, such a joy. And I can't wait to, we'll definitely have you on again for sure. But I can't wait to be in touch and give my love to your family, please.
Okay, thank you. Same to you, okay? Saludos a todos. Gracias.
Bye.